Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Thank you for joining us today. First, it was Super Size Me, then that sugar film. Now, a new documentary, What's with Wheat? The Truth They Don't Want You to Know, is asking some serious questions about wheat. Our guest in studio is the co-director of this Australian feature, Cyndi O'Meara, and she's here to discuss whether modern wheat is to blame for a number of health concerns. Welcome to the program, Cyndi.
Thanks, Neal.
Thank you. You're the co-director of a brand new documentary, What's with Wheat? The Truth They Don't Want You to Know. Normally, truth is a good thing. Why wouldn't they want us to know it? What is this truth that they don't want us to know, especially about wheat?
Well, wheat's a multi-million-dollar industry, and a multi or billion-dollar industry doesn't want to, go down the tubes. And so everybody has believed that, wheat is the stuff of life. But wheat once upon a time may have been the stuff of life, but because of what they've done to wheat, and it's a cascade of events. It's not just one thing. It's a cascade of events that have happened that has made wheat a very big part of our lives, where it's in many of our grocery items. It's in our vitamins and minerals, medications, vaccinations, even doors are made with wheat,
Wow.
So yeah, wheat's a big part of the landscape of food and medications and supplementation, and then again building materials.
Now, as co-director of this recent documentary, are you a filmmaker or are you a nutritionist? Which came first, the filmmaker or the nutritionist?
I've been a nutritionist for 32 years. I graduated in 1984. So I was a nutritionist first, and I wrote a book called Changing Habits, Changing Lives. And we have a company down here that, and I'm down here saying Australia, we have a company down here called Changing Habits, which we have organic foods that we supply to people, or programs and protocols, education programs. And then, I don't know, the documentary was just something that we thought, let's get to more people. And because I had an issue with wheat years previously, and here I am, I'm a nutritionist. I have been for a long time. I was brought up in a very holistic lifestyle. I've never had an antibiotic. I've never had any medications. I've eaten foods from scratch. I've made everything, from organic foods as much as possible. And all of a sudden, at my late 40s, I started to have a wheat issue. And I didn't know it was wheat. What I did was an elimination program, and then introduced foods back in, and wheat just thundered down as the biggest issue of all. So I had done cultural anthropology at the University of Colorado, and I thought, well, let's find out what's happening with wheat. And it was a journey that I went on, and I thought maybe the rest of the world needs to know about what's happening with wheat.
Well, you mentioned earlier, you said what's being done to wheat. I thought wheat was wheat. You grow it, you cut it down, you turn it into cereal or bread or whatever. Are you saying that there's something that's being done to wheat that's maybe to blame for a number of health concerns, everything from brain fog, poor memory, metabolic issues? And if I may ask, what was your specific issue?
Well, I started to gain weight over a 2-year period. I started to get a really sore back, a hip where I thought, geez, am I going to have a hip replacement because I was in so much pain with my hip. I had anxiety at 3 a.m, just like dry skin, dry hair, and I just could not figure out, I'm still eating the same foods. How can this possibly be? And so when I did the elimination, I lost 9 kilos in 3 weeks. So 9 kilos would be 18 pounds in 3 weeks, which has never come back. Yeah, a lot of weight. But I think a lot of it was inflammation. A lot of it was water. So in the first week, I lost nearly 10 pounds. That was in that first week of stopping eating wheat. All my backache disappeared, aches and pains disappeared, absolute clarity of mind came, no anxiety, dry skin disappeared. That took a couple of months before that started to disappear, but slowly but surely things just started to change. I used to lose my voice all the time. That stopped happening. And it's over the years. It's been nearly 5 years since I gave up wheat. I can see I get better and better and better. I get more limber. My yoga practice is better. I can run farther. I swim every day. So, and I'm in my mid-50s. So
simply giving up wheat, what is it about wheat that's not healthy? Or, again, I ask why? What is it about the wheat
Well, it's a many events, and I explain this all through the documentary, but let's just go through them. First of all, we started to fortify our wheat with synthetic vitamins and mined minerals. We started to eat more. It was made into breakfast cereals, which was not the old traditional way of making foods from wheat. Our bread changed. We no longer had sourdoughs. We had a bread that in 2 hours it was in a plastic bag ready for consuming, whereas it used to be a very long process to do the sourdough and to get rid of all the anti-nutrients. And then there's the hybridization of wheat, which happened in the 70s and was basically there to make the mechanization of harvesting far easier. So the whole structure of the wheat changed. And then around 1998-2000, a herbicide called Roundup with the active ingredient glyphosate started to be sprayed on the wheat fields as a desiccant 3 weeks before harvest. Okay. Which we now know destroys bacteria's ability to make amino acids and therefore kills either the bacteria or the plant, and also destroys our microbiome, or has a destructive influence on the microbiome, which means that our amino acids aren't being produced and therefore our neurotransmitters aren't being produced. So there was this cascade of events that just happened where we're eating more, and then the herbicide comes in and more glyphosate is in the wheat, and if you're eating a lot, then you're exposed to more of the herbicide. And so not only were we destroying the plant itself, so we used to have old traditional wheat grains, and now we have this modern wheat grain. The gluten has become stronger, harder to digest, and then we don't have the bacteria that helps us digest that, and therefore we just have this I guess this perfect storm that has happened where now we're seeing so many problems with wheat and gluten.
I understand a multi-billion-dollar industry not wanting to lose any of their money-making ability, but with wheat being in everything, even indoors, as you say. You are aware of this information. You've produced this documentary. Why isn't the medical community screaming bloody murder about this? Isn't this contributing to many of the reasons that we're continually going back to the hospital again and again and again for basically the same illnesses? Are you saying that wheat is pretty much to blame for this?
No, I don't think wheat's the sole problem. At the end of the documentary, I say, look, the story of wheat is the story of food. Mm-hmm. It's time for us to be interested in the production of our food and stop letting the multinationals spray neurotoxins and toxicity on our food that is destroying our very cell structure. So, and as far as the medical community, they're just coming to grips that food has anything to do with our health. So they're way behind the times, and it's something that I have always been interested in is food. 32 years in the same industry, and watching for 32 years people becoming more and more having a problem with wheat. And I guess when it happens to you is when you kind of wake up, and especially when you're in the industry. And, the new condition that's been termed in 2012 called non-celiac wheat sensitivity or non-celiac gluten sensitivity is becoming more and more recognized in research. But it takes up to 17 years for our medical fraternity or even our dietitians to get this information through the university systems. So unless you're out there and really looking at what's happening, you're not going to get this information. And so the documentary was my way of getting to more people instead of a one-on-one consultation basis.
Let's talk a bit about your internet presence, changinghabits.com.au. What would we expect to find there when we navigate to that website?
Well, there's a lot there at the moment. There's lots of programs and protocols. Well, not lots, but we have 4 programs and protocol. And one of them is the 6 weeks no wheat, which we produced as a result of the documentary. But they will see lots of programs and protocols to help them navigate getting away from the foods that we're now consuming, getting away from wheat and starting to eat real foods again. And one of the programs on there is the program that I did to eliminate wheat, and then to figure out that that was my problem. We also have faucet foods, so foods that are organic, sustainable, ethical, and you can trust them because they're in my pantry. And I'm a researcher, so I find the best of foods. There's also my education program. It's a 12-month online nutrition program. And we start with the basics. We start with cultural anthropology and the philosophy of holism or vitalism rather than mechanism, where everybody's breaking foods down now. And other things that you'll find is What's with Wheat, but you can also just go to whatswithwheat.com and you will find everything about the documentary, who's on it. We've got some amazing talent and researchers and pediatricians and gastroenterologists that I went around the world, and activists and farmers to talk to about what's happened to wheat. And it's a phenomenal, even if I say so myself, it is a phenomenal documentary because it tells a story and it goes back to the 1920s when we started to change wheat.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you in studio today with us, Cyndi.
Thank you very much, Neal.
Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm. And you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes.